So in the next 20 minutes, I wanted to give you an insight into the evaluation. It is this document, which is 272 pages long. I'm not going to read every page, do not worry. But I think an important point about that is that last year there were 23 cities and capitals of culture throughout the world in different continents, all with different projects, initiatives, ideas behind them. Hull was one of the first, if not the first, yet to be scientifically proven, to publish its evaluation. Fundamentally because there is a belief and there is an energy in this city that legacy is absolutely about moving forwards. We had a fantastic year. It was brilliant. It was a success. But actually the most important thing is, what do we do with that information now? How do we take that information and apply it to 18, to 19, to 20, to the next 10 years, to the next 20 years? And our organisation, so what was Hull UK City of Culture 2017 Limited, is carrying on into the future and will be just one part of that continuing story for the city. But before we go into the future, I wanted to take a moment to indulge in the past. This is the bid. Don't proofread it, but it was from 2013. It has been by most of our desks for the last 3 years, going, what did we say on page 12? Bollocks, don't tell anyone that. And it's been a great opportunity to see something go absolutely on a journey, from workshops that took place where just a few people turned up and brought objects and symbols and memories of the city that then went on to shape entire shows and spectacles and events, to conversations and ideas that started maybe in a pub or in a school somewhere and then evolved and became something that people led themselves and took forwards. So there is a real sense that actually everything that was said in this document may not have existed in the exact turn of phrase, the exact event, the exact object, but those things are fundamentally everything people experienced over the last year. And I think it's always useful to reflect on the evaluation in that context. So from bid to delivery, Hull's bid was very much about the city finding its voice again, and finding that voice and using it to really assert its place in the UK. Nobody's really sure back in 2013, had Hull turned its back on the UK or had the UK turned its back on Hull, but neither were particularly speaking to each other that well, and this was an opportunity to reconnect both with the city inside, but also the wider UK and the rest of the world. The DCMS run the initiative, so Hull was only the second one, and Derry, London Derry, as you've heard, was the first one. And it's very much around, you can do whatever you want as long as you use culture and creativity to drive forward a place, whether that's through regeneration, increased social impact, economic impact. There's actually quite a blank canvas for what a city of culture might be. Hull made quite an early commitment to do something every single day for a year. Such a simple sentence, such a challenging thing to deliver, but Hull absolutely nailed it, and you'll see that in some of the stats that I'll share in a while. But also, fundamentals of the programme is about establishing new partnerships. And back in 2013, it was very much the business community that led the way with those new partnerships. I remember events, including the one that was at the Bridgehead Park development, when it was still just an empty shell, where members of the bid team, members of the partner organisations stood up, and you had a pitch about we could be UK City of Culture. And this was still at a point when people were a bit iffy as to whether that was a good idea or not. And I was sat next to Kay Stevenson from KCOM at the time, and she went, we could actually win this, couldn't we? And I was like, yes, Kay. And from that moment onwards, I know she was on an internal lobbying committee to make sure that KCOM were absolutely front and centre in that process. And they really stuck with it all the way through. But also that was the moment that a lot of the bid angels, some of the first corporate partners and supporters of the year, got involved with the project and stayed with it again all the way through. So all these pieces of evidence and game-changing moments have gone on to deliver what the year's become. But there were 4 step changes. We knew that fundamentally UK City of Culture was about changing the story of the city. We were fiercely proud of this place. We knew it had a great reputation and a great story to tell, but it needed to move forward. It needed to find a new way to communicate that narrative. First and foremost, we needed to raise the aspirations and skills of local people through participation, engagement, learning. We needed to make sure people got outside and really took part in the incredible opportunities that would be available through arts and culture, and the knock-on benefits on well-being, on self that would have if people took part in the year. Naturally, as we'll hear quite a bit about today, we wanted to grow the size and strength of the economy, and there were very much, it's not me is it, there were very much two focus areas there. The first was on the cultural sector itself, so making sure that actually arts organisations are businesses, the creative industries are businesses, and they need to be financially sustainable, they need to be robust, they need to grow their earned income and diversify their income sources, and those cultural sector businesses needed to thrive in this year. We needed to leave them stronger and more able to deliver culture in 18, 19 and 20 in the firm foundations of organisations beyond the year. The second was the visitor economy, so making sure that actually when we bring visitors to the city that they're spending in bars, that they're staying in hotels, that they're using the shops and retail offer of the city centre and the wider neighbourhoods and region, and growing the size and strength of the visitor economy was also fundamental to achieving that step change. Hull was on a big regeneration journey. You've heard about Siemens making additional investments. I still remember that moment when we found out Siemens were building a giant wind turbine blade factory in the city, and all of us pretended like we knew what a giant wind turbine blade factory actually was, but we just knew it was really big and really exciting, and we were very pleased it was coming to Hull, not Denmark. So that was a key moment in the changing story of the city. But actually, UK City of Culture had to be a catalyst for further investment. It had to be a reason that hotels would want to invest and build, that businesses would want to improve their infrastructure, their plant equipment, and we've seen some of that in the year. And then finally, the year was an opportunity to transform attitudes and perceptions to the city. There is very much a sense that we've absolutely known how great Hull's been for many, many decades, but people had either not known enough about Hull or had completely the wrong perceptions of this city, and part of this year was an opportunity to get them here and to put those myths wrong, but also to fundamentally change the national story about Hull. Why were we in the main national media? What were those conversations about? And why did we want to be known nationally and internationally? The evaluation itself has been led by the University of Hull. So the University of Hull, again, major institution in the city, and came on board very, very early in the process and said, we want to get stuck in. We want to evaluate everything. We want to put our own programme on in the year, which will be fabulous. We want teachers to become volunteers. We want them to use our campus. We want to financially invest in the programme. They're a great example of an organisation that saw the opportunities beyond just becoming a partner. And they established a new institute called the Culture, Place and Policy Institute, just to look at the importance of culture, place and policy in culture-led regeneration, and to use Hull as that blueprint. They're led by Professor Franco Bianchini, who's their director, and they have fundamentally been at the heart of everything we've done over the course of this project. They've studied us, they've watched us, they've calculated us. There's nothing that institute does not know about the inner workings of 2017, probably slightly more than I think they'd want to. But what we agreed quite early on was this was very much a 360 project. We'd have to look at it through many different lenses to really understand the impacts that it had delivered. The first, naturally, arts and culture. Was the programme of quality? Did we reach new audiences? Did we engage existing audiences? Were there opportunities for national, international and local artists as part of the programme? Placemaking. Was it fundamentally changing the way people feel about the place? Did the welcome of the city work? Did the public realm have an impact on how people feel? Are people fundamentally proud to live in Hull at the end of the year? And the economy, which I've touched on, and then probably a slightly under-talked about area, so actually society and well-being. The arts has a fundamental ability to make us feel happier, to make us reconnect with our emotions, to improve mental well-being, and to engage us in events that get us out and increase our physical well-being as well. So we wanted to look at the whole impact of the year through the lens of, did it have an impact on the lives of an individual? Did it change the way a community feel about themselves? And then finally, partnerships and development. We could not have done this alone. We did not do this alone. This was fundamentally a collective act. You'll have heard Martin say that many times over the course of the year. But there were 80 funding partners that made it possible. There were 50 national portfolio organisations that got involved in the year. There were hundreds of artists and arts organisations and thousands of individuals. every single person put some energy in that resulted in the impacts that you'll hear about today. But this preliminary outcomes evaluation is really early. It's just a few months after the end of the year, and some of the most important impacts from this project will take 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years to really understand. That impact on local businesses, actually we know what the short-term impacts were, but were they sustained? Were they sustained in the areas that we thought they would be sustained? Did arts organisations continue to grow following on from the year? And part of the long-term evaluation will look at that and answer some of those more challenging long-term questions. So, in numbers, there were 365 days across 4 cultural seasons. The total audience for the year was 5.3 million people interacting with arts and cultural activity across those 2,800 events. They took place in more than 300 venues and spaces, and there were 465 new commissions as part of the year, so new pieces of work that just did not exist before the project. The target in the bid was 60, so I think that explains why the phrase "you can sleep when it's over" took on a whole new meaning by the end of the year. And out of those 465 commissions, 1 and 2 of them were inspired by the history and heritage of this city. And one of the things that really powerfully comes through in all of the evaluation is this could not have happened anywhere else in the way that it did. This was about Hull finding its voice again and finding new ways to tell those stories through arts and culture. So in terms of that raising aspirations and skills through increased participation and learning, nearly every resident took part in at least one thing throughout the course of the year. Around 95%. We are still hunting down the other 5%. If you see them, lock them in a theatre and make them watch a show. We will get to 100% as the city at some point in the near future. But yeah, 9 in 10 residents. And if you think before the year of culture, cultural participation was in the 30s and 40s%. There was not this level of going and engaging with museums and galleries and public art spaces and theatre shows and outdoor spectacle. That was a massive change that happened both in the build-up to the year and in the year itself. But probably the most interesting stat is this second one, which looks really dull, but it's 9% increase in the confidence of residents to take part or join in with cultural and non-cultural activities. So what we do is at the end of every year for the last 3 or 4 years, we do a citywide resident survey and we ask them, how likely or confident are you to join in sports and recreational activities, leisure and shopping activities, arts and cultural activities, volunteering, community-led activities. And our expectation before the year was that by the end of 17, people would be lots more confident to engage in art. That's the main thing we'll achieve. But actually, they all went up dramatically by 9%. So you've got this flatline graph that all of a sudden just peaks because people reconnected. It wasn't specifically about an art form or a type of event or a particular show. People found a renewed confidence to engage, whether that was in volunteering, community-led activity, arts and culture. The audience itself overall, as I said, over half were attendances from Hull residents. 1 in 5 were from the rest of the UK, which is a significant increase on previous events in the city, and they literally came from all over the UK. There was people who travelled from the upper regions of Scotland, right from the corners of Devon and Cornwall. It was something that had a massive ability to bring the UK together. But the most density came from a 1 to a 1.5 hour drive time. So people who were popping over for a day, wanted to experience it, really liked it, came back maybe for a night, a stay over later in the year. So we definitely built a new relationship within other northern towns and cities as a result of the year. Our volunteers were a phenomenal resource. They are an unstoppable force. We thought they'd do 40,000 hours, it's what it says in here. They did 337,000 hours, so the amount of packed lunches more than quadrupled as a result of the year, and that was over the course of 84,000 shifts, which is equivalent, if you stacked it all together, to 38.5 years worth of volunteering. And since I made these slides, that's still gone up and up and up. They're out there, they're everywhere, continually volunteering in their scandalous blue uniforms. Through working with many partners, we were able to do activities and engagement opportunities in over 100 schools as part of the year, which reached between them 56,000 children and young people. That was very much a partnership approach again, so an ability to work with existing organisations, My Pockets, who made the FuzzFeed series that you can see online, Dom Heffer, who's an artist that went to schools to make sculpture, the Children's University, who created a whole digital platform for young people to share exciting creative content and experiences throughout the year. That, as a collective result, increased young people's self-esteem by 34%. Now, if that in 10, 15, 20 years' time turns into a different job decision, a different life choice, then that, in a way, makes the whole thing worth it, regardless of the rest of the stats. In terms of the size and strength of the cultural economy, ticket sales went up in the year, and the income that's associated with that also went up at a similar level. You know, people were spending money from far and locally in our venues and in our cultural attractions, which has made them more resilient for the future. But most interestingly, 60% of those people buying tickets, it was their first time buying a ticket for that venue or that organisation. There was a lot of people trying things for the first time, which means there's now an opportunity to re-engage that audience and make them loyal customers and loyal fan bases for those arts institutions. We consulted the cultural sector at the end of the year, and 87% of them are optimistic about the future and what lies ahead. So there's a real sense that that impact on the cultural sector and those creative industries business has allowed them to try things, experiment, build new audiences that for the longer term will make them more resilient and parts of Hull's cultural ecosystem. Impact on the visitor economy is slightly harder to quantify, and we rely on a lot of national and international surveys which come out throughout the course of 2018, but based on the proxy data we have, we know that the projected impact on the visitor economy means that tourism in 2017 was worth more than £300 million, and that's a conservative estimate. It probably, fingers crossed, will go up. That's as a result of over 6 million visitors to the city, many of whom went on to engage in the cultural offer of the city, which, if we think where we were as a city back in 2013 when this bid was written, the number of visitors was 4.7 million. So we've massively increased the number of people coming to Hull on an annual basis to engage in the city's visitor offer, which will have a knock-on 11 to 17 million gross value added on the local economy. Even just creating our organisation alone, an independent charity operating in the city, employing people, spending in many of the local bars and cafes throughout the city centre, our business has had an impact on the local economy of over £12 million as a direct result of Hull 2017 Limited. Hotel occupancy is up 10%. Rail travel was up. It's having a little bit of a dip at the minute, but then we'll be going back up again. Journeys across the Humber Bridge were up in the course of the year. So a lot of this data has helped us build a picture that more people came, and we know that they spent more money over the course of the year. The city as a whole, since 2013, has seen 3.4 billion of public and private investment. So across those range of investments by RB, by KCOM, by Siemens, by smaller organisations, by hotels and by bars and cafes, there has been a massive surge of investment into Hull, which is fundamentally important. And we know that of that 3.4 billion, about 219 million of it was directly or partially influenced by Hull being named UK City of Culture. The programme itself, across all the work that's been done with partners, has created nearly 800 jobs across the visitor and cultural economy since 2013. And our fundraising target for the project was about 15.8 million, raised to 18 million, and we raised 32.8 million to deliver the year, which is more than double the original fundraising target. Yes, that was absolutely because local organisations stepped up and gave us more and wanted to be fundamentally part of the year, but also because we saw organisations like the lottery funders, HLF, Arts Council England, Big Lottery Fund, increasing their investment into the city. There was a frustration amongst some of our national lottery funders that they had money that they wanted to give to Hull, but they weren't receiving enough high quality applications, and they weren't able to tap into some of the networks that existed in the city to award that funding. One example of that would be Arts Council England have an initiative called Grants for the Arts, which has just changed its name. We received, as an organisation, none of our funding through Grants for the Arts, but their investment into Hull through that programme went up by 346% over the course of bidding to delivering the year. So I think what that was a sign of was that those organisations were seeing an opportunity to work together for the first time and invest in a place and a destination. Over half the businesses that were surveyed as part of the evaluation, real mixed businesses from across the city centre and beyond, felt that this had increased their turnover as a result of the year. They'd taken on new staff, so 1 in 4 had taken on new staff, and 1 in 5 had extended opening hours. And of those businesses that had taken on new staff, about 80% of them are planning to keep those staff in 18, 19 and 20. So there's a sense that those jobs, although the longer term evaluation will prove this, so I'm not predicting anything that hasn't yet been proved, there will be a sense that those jobs will continue and will continue to add value to the local economy. And then finally, transforming attitudes and perceptions of Hull. So 3 in 4 residents are proud to live in Hull, and 61% of those who visited Hull in 2017 said they were likely to return in the future, with 3 in 4 saying it had changed their perception for the better. The year created an unprecedented opportunity to raise the profile of the city. Over 20,000 pieces of media coverage, online, print and broadcast, with, if you believe any of the way that they calculate advertising value equivalent in eyeballs, could have been seen by 37.3 billion people, if they existed, and £450 million if we had to buy it outright through advertising. So a real sense that actually, regardless of the numbers, that Hull was on the map, literally with the BBC, but on the map in the minds of the nation. You woke up in the morning, you could see us on BBC News, in the print, everywhere, and that was really important in helping change that narrative and that story. But I think, I've tried to pick out a handful of the stats and the numbers, the percentages that are all available to download online and read at your leisure. But the reason I played that video right at the start is because it's really important not to lose sight of those very personal, transformative stories that people have had. If this year was a ladder, then every single person has taken a step up that ladder. They may have been starting from a different point, but everyone has had a different experience of 2017. For some, it has been quite literally life-changing. We have stories of individuals who have had very challenging personal circumstances who, for the year, it was an opportunity to change where they were taking their life. For others, they just had a really good time and it made them feel better and they enjoyed it and they loved it. For others, it had negative impacts and there were areas that we need to learn from the evaluation. Not everything went perfectly in 2017. It was a real experiment. Nobody had done this before. There are things that we, the cultural sector, the visitor economy sector, many of our partners would do differently, but fundamentally and more importantly, will do differently when we move forwards. There is a need to maintain momentum. It's easy not to remember what it was like when there were 4,000 orange barriers in the city and it felt like we were never going to announce a programme of events and nothing was ever going to start, and didn't we win City of Culture 4 centuries ago and it still hasn't arrived yet. So we're definitely, I think, in that period again. There's a little bit of a hangover. Of course there would be. There were 2,800 events. But actually what's really exciting is if you look closely, already there are some fantastic things going on in the city this year. Hull Trucks started with a really strong programme. We saw the Back to Hours Festival return and take place across neighbourhoods in the city, putting world-class work into shopping centres, community centres, venues and more. We've got the Ferrens Open on at the minute. 2 new exhibitions opened at Humber Street Gallery. Many of the existing events that were funded to the Creative People and Places programme, Creative Communities programme, returning this year, bigger and stronger. Pride continuing, Freedom Festival coming back, Humber Street Sesh being bigger and bolder and 2 days and better than ever. Who thought they could fit any more bands in? So there is a sense that actually, yes, we need to maintain momentum. Yes, we need to keep things moving forward, but we need to find a new normal. We need to find a world where we can sleep, as well as engage in arts, culture and wonderful activity. An environment where there is availability of funding and that funding is sustainable. There are enough venues to go around. There is continued investment in capital projects in the city. And I think what we can always be assured of is that that new normal is a world apart from where we started in 2013, and the priority now has to be building on that. This evaluation also is a really important evidence tool. You know, there are cuts and cuts and cuts happening throughout the UK, and actually investing in arts and culture, if this doesn't prove that it has a return on investment, I honestly don't think anything ever will. And this is a really powerful way of wholesaling to other cities, to government, to public agencies and to corporates that investing in the arts can change people's lives in the same way that sport can, in the same way that community-led activities can, in the same way that volunteering can, but also that great art is fundamentally something that makes us who we are. It helps us find our voice, tell our stories, express our individuality, and actually we should keep making new commissions and doing great art because it's an important thing for us to do. It's great that it has all these benefits. It's great that it makes this fundamental impact, but we need to just make sure we are supporting artists to continue to do that. So what next? We had a conference over the last 2 days of last week on the 15th and 16th, which was led by the University of Hull, called Cultural Transformations. It was a really important moment of reflection. It was a chance for us to come together and assess what do we do, how do we feed that into individual organisations' plans, but also wider plans for the city. And we're busy kind of pulling that together with the many partners that helped make it happen. The research is published at hull.ac.uk/CPPI. Use it as a tool. If you're involved in the year, absolutely use it as evidence of why it was so important that you played a pivotal role in making these impacts that are outlined. If you want to continue supporting arts or finding new arts organisations to support in the city, use it to inform a business case, to inform a reason why now, in 2018, this is the first time that your organisation should get involved with a company, with an arts organisation. Naturally, Coventry, the next UK City of Culture, are just starting their journey. They were down in force. There were about 9 of them at the conference. Never seen so many people write so furiously for 2 days and go home in absolute horror with wide eyes going, oh my God, it's so soon. Like, that'll be fine. And there will be a final evaluation report that will be published in 2019, which will sit alongside a longer term study to really assess those longer term impacts of the year.